day before Thanksgiving in 1971, a man identifying himself as Dan Cooper bought a plane ticket from Portland to Seattle. He hijacked the plane, claiming he had a bomb in his briefcase, and demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes. He jumped out of the plane with the money and the bomb somewhere over the Pacific Northwest, never to be seen again. The FBI claims to have investigated over 1,000 people, including dozens of deathbed confessions. In 2016, 45 years after the hijacking, the FBI suspended its investigation of the case. While the FBI is no longer looking for D.B. Cooper, there is a community of people who are trying to solve the case on their own. Welcome to the Cooper Vortex. This is an interview I've been looking forward to since the second I saw the John Dower HBO doc, The Mystery of D.B. Cooper. There was one person in there that I hadn't met. Not only had I not met this person, but I had no idea who he was, and none of my friends in the Vortex knew him either. He was introduced to us as Joe's Memory Man, an unfortunate moniker the producers gave to him. Well, lucky for you, I tracked him down. Turns out he's been lurking in the Vortex for over a decade. The OG Dropzone posters may remember SafecrackingPLF. That's right, it's him. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, Tim Collins. Tim, how did you get into D.B. Cooper?
Well, let's see. First, I grew up kind of down there, and so I found out about it just by living down there, but that's not how I got into it.
What area did you grow up in?
I lived in Mount Vista. You know where that is?
I do. I lived in Winlock and Woodland.
Okay. So that's a few miles from the search area there. But how I got into it was when I was living in Seattle. I was sorry, I should back up here. So I was a card counter at one point in time. I started card counting in college, and I really got into it. And after college, I stopped doing that, and I had converted my garage into a card room and had people over, and I was running like a illegal gambling hall kind of sort of thing. And one day, I would always keep track of like the card counting world, and one day I see a post, and all it said was D.B. Cooper. And I was like, okay, that's a really weird thing to see on a card counting forum.
It was a card counting forum.
Yep.
And the post was D.B. Cooper.
Stanford Wong's BJ21.
D.B. Cooper, BJ21 free message board, the 3rd of October, 2004. Last night on the Discovery Channel, they had an episode of Unsolved History looking into the mystery involving the amazing D.B. Cooper. The wind-up of it all, that a dying man admitted to his wife in 1995 he was Cooper, but had no proof. Having only a 1971 sketch to go by and a picture of this dying man from his later years, the investigators went to Las Vegas to see if facial recognition could resolve this mystery. Having never tried to put a description sketch in the system before, they did not know if it would work. Among the millions of faces in the database, the sketch identified this man as their top match. They also stated that FRS, I assume facial recognition software, has been greatly improved since 1996 when it first came out. Those who refuse to acknowledge the accuracy of FRS and choose to spread their uninformed nonsense to others will never learn.
So, the reason for the post and why it would be in a card counting forum, especially back then, is that FRS was this big threat in the casino because card counters would wear disguises and they would do sorts of things to kind of take the eye off them.
Right, and they get kicked out.
Right, they can get kicked out. That's
it's not illegal, but they don't have to let you sit there.
Right, not everyone knows that it's legal to card count. I've had people tell me it was illegal, but it's perfectly legal. But they'll do all sorts of things to you. So yeah, this guy was just saying, look, this FRS stuff is real. A lot of people were saying, it's not that big of a deal. Well, of course, since then, now it's ubiquitous. I've heard that Facebook can, if you have a picture of yourself in your house and there's a picture of somebody on the wall, Facebook, their algorithms can see the picture on the wall, and even though that person has never had an account, they know who it is. Like, that's how good their FRS is.
Oh, yeah.
It blows you away. So anyway, I saw this and was like, really? This is insane. There is actually, I was surprised that, first of all, back then I didn't know that there was suspects. I didn't know there was that many suspects. I didn't know that there was any sort of development, any controversy, any debate. I didn't know there was any of this stuff. So I just saw this and was like, really? There's actually something out there. This DB Cooper thing may actually have something. So I tried to find this episode, and after some work, I actually was able to find it. And I actually have the segment here in question that he just talked about. Hold on. Yeah, here it is.
A leading developer of facial recognition software, one of the newest tools in security and law enforcement.
Hi.
Hey, you must be Jonas.
Yes, Jeff
Troy.
Jonas.
Troy, good to meet you. I'm just checking some of this stuff out here. Of course, I have no idea what I'm looking at. You got to tell me, what is it? This facial recognition.
The software that we're going to show you today is stuff that we built for the gaming industry in 1996. And it's used by the surveillance rooms when they have a subject that they're very interested in. It allows them to zoom in on that subject and compare their face to a list of thousands of faces.
Cool. Well, we got a guy of particular interest, DB Cooper.
Yeah.
We have a sketch.
Today's going to be the first time we've seen in our lab what we can do with a sketch. So we're just as curious as you about what's going to happen with DB Cooper.
All right, well, let's get started. I want to see this.
So the technique that's used by the Identic software is called local feature analysis. It's using this part of the face. It's starting with the center of the eyes, and it's taking various nodal points and angles between those points. And that's the portion of your face that's the most robust to changes. If you grow a beard, that's outside of that range.
Right. It's all in the eyes.
For the facial recognition test, our team will compare the FBI's composite sketch to photos of Duane Weber and two other men once suspected of being DB Cooper.
We have a composite sketch and 3 photos of guys who piqued investigators' interest at the time. When we throw them in there, what do you think's going to happen?
You know, I have no idea what's going to happen. This would be the first time in this lab that we've taken a picture, a sketch of somebody, and compared it to suspect pictures. So we're just as curious as you guys. So while it's searching, the thing to remember here is that in 1971, there was no technology like this that existed. In 1996, when we first implemented this for the gaming industry, the technology was fair. Today, that technology is even better. And here's the results.
Let's see here. We look in this. There's Duane Weber.
Out of the top 10 people that have come back out of these thousands of pictures, Duane Weber has matched number 1 of the 3 suspects. Since he's the first out of all 3 of the FBI suspects, one would certainly focus more attention on him when solely looking at the facial recognition side of things.
Amazing.
Our facial recognition test indicates that Duane Weber is a remarkable match to the composite sketch of DB Cooper, but it is not proof.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. And I like the idea that facial recognition software was so cutting edge in 1996. That's a little bit funny.
Yeah.
Because 1996 now is over 20 years ago.
Well, that's when they first came out with it. But yeah, so the card counters were trying to thwart it back then. And there were people who were saying, look, it's a legit threat. And what are we going to do about this? And that was the whole gist of that guy's post. It wasn't so much about DB Cooper. It was more about, hey, these casinos are onto us, and what are we going to do about it? Kind of thing.
But it sent you into the DB Cooper.
Yeah,
vortex.
sadly, I'm not sure. I say sadly because I'm not sure if it's. I haven't quite decided if it's. I kind of have a love-hate thing going on with.
I definitely get it.
Yeah, it's taken a lot, but this has been quite the journey. It's been kind of like a hero's quest of sorts. And it's a funny thing about a hero's quest is that, while you're in a quest, ultimately what you're going to find is yourself. And so that's kind of where I'm at in this whole stage, is kind of finding myself. And not really sure where it's all going to lead or finish out or whatever. But anyway. So that's kind of how I got into it. From there, there was one other segment on here I wanted to show you. How they concluded the show. So I'm like, okay, seems compelling, right? The post said there was millions of people in the database. There's only I don't know, I think 3,000 or 5,000 or something. There's a few thousand, but still, a guy who says he did it winds up being the top match, right? So I thought, well, geez, that's pretty compelling. What's the story? And that was really my question. What was the story? What happened? And that kind of sent me on this thing. But here is where we begin. Certainly not where we end.
And this is the end of that same episode.
Yeah, this is the end of the episode.
According to Jo, Dwayne told her that he had buried the money in the woods, but he had forgotten the exact location. Is it possible that a small fortune in $20 bills is still buried somewhere in the Pacific Northwest? We may never know.
Anyway, they go
Okay,
on.
now tell me that you got super curious about finding the money buried in the woods.
So it's not so much about finding the money for me as much as like, what the hell happened? Are you serious? Like, the guy buried the money and couldn't find it? That's it? That's the story? So I'm sitting there thinking, okay, and I start, well, okay, so then how did the money get on the river? Because I know they found some money on the river, so how did that happen? And I had just too many things I was curious about at this point. And I said, all right, we've got to go try to get to the source. So I looked her up and contacted her. And
That was your first move. I want to talk to Jo Weber.
well, maybe the first move was a little Googling or whatever. And I read some of her posts, read a few posts of hers, and was able to, on one of the sites, she literally had her email address. Here's her username and then her email address, like right under it, publicly. And I thought, no one's that stupid. No one's gonna do that. So I thought, okay, this is someone spoofing. So I did a search on that email address, and I came up with an agent at Exit Realty in Florida, and I looked up an ad that had the agent in Florida, and I'm like, that's the same woman in the show. I mean, it's clearly her. So I guess if there is someone silly enough to put their real email address in a public forum, okay. So that's how I got a hold of her. And she was very skeptical of me at first. And
this is, again, 2004, 2005-ish.
Yeah, 2004. It was about 2 weeks before I proposed to my wife. And so one of the things I did, I don't know if you want to say I won her over, but I was talking to her about my plans to propose, and that we were going to do this at the top of the Space Needle. And, of course, she had her own experience with Dwayne at the top of the Space Needle. So she had told me all about it. And it was kind of this weird, ever since that night, I'd say, I'm up there getting ready to propose. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm wondering if D.B. Cooper was actually here in the gift shop buying stuff. Because she's telling me, like, he bought this for her and all this. And they went up to the top. So sadly, like, this whole thing's been haunting me ever since like that. And, yeah. Anyway, so I shared pictures. I've shared pictures with Jo the next day, how'd it go. And I think she saw that I was just this young guy at the time, I guess was just more accepting, maybe.
Did you ever post on the Dropzone or the D.B. Cooper forum?
So I am actually known on the Dropzone. I'm actually mentioned in that book. My username, and the only reason I started posting in the Dropzone was because Carr was there. So I would have never, ever, ever posted. I just have no interest in engaging in this stuff publicly. But I posted because the opportunity to have an agent on the case interacting with you in real time was just too compelling.
Definitely.
So my username is SafecrackingPLF.
You're SafecrackingPLF.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
It's nice to meet you. When the HBO doc premiered, I told you this story already, but it's like, okay, there's Bruce Smith, there's the Foremans, there's Jo Weber. I've had them on my show. He was on my show. I know who that is. And then it said, Joe's Memory Man. And I was like, I said to my wife, who is that guy? And why do I not know who he is? I've been in this community for quite a long time. I know who
sure, you know all
everyone
the players.
is.
Yeah,
and
you know the
to
players.
see you in that documentary.
Yeah, where'd this guy come from?
Where is this guy? Who is he? And why don't I know him?
Yeah, well, no one had seen me in 9 years since I had done a YouTube series where I was talking about various elements of the case or whatever, and I quite verbose. Not my proudest work, but but I did put it up. Anyhow, it's funny that John Dower chose to use the memory man. He really went with that pitch. I gotta tell you sort of what was happening at the time. Now I was traveling. I was in Seattle, and Joe's brother just died. The guy was swimming and just died in the pool, right there in the pool, doing laps. And probably about, I don't know, 2-3 days later, she tells me these people from Britain are coming over and want to do a documentary. She's panicked because she knows her memory is starting to go at this point. She's like, I don't trust myself to do this. And she's an old woman who, I'll put it this way, as many times, I can't count how many times I offered to go out there and help her with trying to present herself, I should say, to people. And every time I offered to come out and help her, she would rebuff, just refuse. No, I'm not going to live that much longer. And it's just the stress. I don't know. I don't know if it's some people happen. I don't know if it's the age. I don't know if it's the personality, but no matter what I tried, she just would not take me up on the offer. So John Dower comes along, and she's now panicked. She wants to do the interview,
Right.
but she doesn't trust herself to do the interview. And she's feeling overwhelmed. And I can understand that because, I mean, just putting together a few clips and audio clips and stuff for you, it's like, okay, it takes time. And she's old, and she's got, 6-7 suitcases full of random stuff, and it's scattered everywhere. And so she's feeling overwhelmed. And she says, okay, well, she tells John, I'll do it, but I have to have this guy here to help me do the interview. I know I don't trust my memory. So her pitch to him was that I was this person to help her with her memory. And I feel like, and he really wanted to go at that angle in our interviews, and he didn't throw any of it into the, because I really wasn't, I said, listen, John, I got to use notes just as much as the next guy. Like I said to you, I've forgotten more about this than an emphasis on forgotten. I mean, I try not to remember a lot of stuff. I try to get it out of my head as much as I can, but he just went with the memory man. So now I'm like, yeah, the memory man on there. I think it's silly, but that's the kind of way he chose to pitch it to the audience. I'm definitely more than just somebody who was there for memory support, because Jo is a complicated person. Have you ever talked to her?
Yeah, I spoke with her a couple of times 2 years ago now, maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, so
when the podcast first started, I thought, she's one of the people that I have to have on the show. And the first time I spoke to her, it ended up being for, like 2 hours.
Okay.
And when she called, I had it ready to record the phone call. And we started talking, and I said, hey, is it okay if I record this? And she said no. And so I turned it off. And then we spoke, like I said, for like 2 hours. And at the very end of it, she said, you know what? It's fine if you record this. And I thought, I turned it off. I should have at least let it go.
Yeah.
But I spoke to her maybe 1 or 2 more times, but I thought it wouldn't be kind for me to put her on the podcast, because she's an old gal and isn't as sharp as she used to be. And so I think it would just come off cruel. To put her on the show. And when I saw her on the HBO thing, I thought, okay, that must have they must have spent a long time with her to get that out.
I tell you what. I mean, even what they showed. I mean, she was the part where I jumped in. I thought for sure they're not going to put that. They're not going to put this. I tried so hard not to step in. She was butchering her story so bad that I think it was just the stress. Because here's the thing: even though she knew she was losing her memory, and I knew she was losing her memory, because I would be on the phone with her and leading up to when she invited me out finally, and she would forget she's on the phone with me. So we're in the middle of a conversation, and she forgets I'm the one she's talking to. And how do I know? Because she would start literally talking about me on the phone. And not that she was saying anything bad. It was all good stuff, but tells me right there. I mean, her short-term memory was shot. But if I started asking her questions about elements of her story, she could always go back and tell me the story. So it was still fairly intact. And that day, those couple days down there in Florida, I don't know. I think maybe the stress, lack of sleep, the worry or something. I don't know, but it wasn't it wasn't working very well. And I felt really bad that they were going to have to edit all this. I have audio tape of like the whole thing, but I haven't sat through and listened to it. But yeah, I tried to, Joe, you're talking about, well, I'd have to show you the clip, but yeah, she's talking about adjusting his pillow. That's 4 days after the confession. Can we back up and walk them through? One of the better times that she did for me, let's see. I'll walk through sort of the confession a little bit. So it was March 5th, 1995 was the day that he was in real bad shape. He was very, very sick. I mean, his kidneys were failing, and he was just continually bleeding, from his genitals. And it was nonstop. So it was not uncommon for him to, piss blood or whatever, but no, this was like nonstop. So given the fact that he was sick, he had a broken arm, his left arm was broken. And Joe finally had a point in the weekend on a Sunday morning. She said, all right, we're going to take you in. And this is where we're going to cue up. So she is describing how he's leaning up against, the clip starts with, she's describing how he's leaning up against the wall and the bar of their house. So he's like in the corner in the nestled in between, just like letting the wall and the bar support his weight as she comes over to help him get dressed.
On the wall on one side and the bar, kitchen bar on the other.
Okay, all right.
And so I get his long johns on him, and get his sweatpants on him. And in the process of my doing that, I asked him, I said, when are you ever going to tell me how you messed that leg up? Because when I'd asked him before, he'd never tell me. I'll tell you about it someday.
So it's not the first time you asked?
No, it's not the first time I asked, but that's the first time he ever gave me an answer. It was always, I'll tell you about it someday. I just figured, oh yeah, I was doing something I wasn't supposed to do,
Right.
And he says, I got to jumping out of a plane. I'm like, you jump out of a plane? Come on, give me a break. Here I am, he's bleeding. I'm on my squatting down, trying to get him dressed. And I literally start laughing at the poor man. That's a good, I'm sitting down on the ground trying to get his long john. And I got to jump out. I literally was laughing so hard that I went down on my butt. And I'm trying to get him ready to go to the hospital.
Right.
And, but at any rate, that passed very quickly. I got him to the hospital, He was.
They proceed to leave the house, and he tells the house goodbye, and she says, oh, you're going to be back. And of course he never was. He knew it was his time. He knew what, he had his own ideas. He probably could have come back if he really, really wanted to. But his life was very miserable. Being up in the middle of the night, puking and just, oh God, he couldn't sleep. Like I said, his arm was broken. He was frail. It's interesting. The casting in that John Dower film was just amazing. The guy they had to play Duane Weber in the hospital, except for the character in the hospital bed is like what Dwayne looked like when he was vibrant and healthy. When he was in the hospital, he was withered and just like emaciated and just not in good shape. But still, I thought it was I was like, wow, the casting director did a fabulous job on that. So they get to the hospital, and he spends about a week kind of trying to rehab. So normally when you're on dialysis, it's like 2 times a week or whatever, but now they got him going every day, and they're going to try to get him so he's not feeling sick. After about a week of this, he just, I think he just, like, I see the writing on the wall. This isn't, it's not helping, screw it. And she comes walking in on a Thursday. It's the day the confession happened. So I believe it was a Thursday, March 16th, 1995. She comes walking in midday, and she walks in, and there's a doctor there, and it's just awkward silence going on. And he says, Joe, bring me my briefcase. Because he had told her, you're keeping that briefcase with you everywhere. It's not to leave your side. So she brings it in. He pops it open, and he hands the doctor his living will and starts to berate the doctor. Because basically they were trying to assess his mental capacity to make a decision such as going off of dialysis. He was refusing to go. It's like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done doing this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, well, do you know what that means? Because if you go off dialysis, that's not exactly going to be a pleasant experience. Okay. Not going to be a fun death. And so they are trying to assess his mental capacity. And so he shows them the living will. So she described after everyone leaves the room, they've told her that based on their experience, he's got about 5 days to live. And I believe he wound up living 12 days. It's funny, though, when he went on dialysis, and that's another thing we'll talk about. When he first went on dialysis, they gave him 5 years, and that was pretty accurate.
And after they left, he asked me, because there was like a bin, and you couldn't see if someone was in the entryway, and there was a curtain between he and this other one, but I had pulled, he says, is there anyone else here? I said, no, because they were not, he had the room to himself. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, I thought he was wanting a cigarette, because they would allow him to smoke if I would hold the cigarette. And so I already had the cigarette. He says, no, like this with his hand.
So
No.
he waves it like this. No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And he says, come here. I want to talk to you.
All right. So here's the bed. I'm him, and he says, come here. I want to talk to you. And where are you? You...
Okay. There's the bed. There's the window to the hospital.
Okay.
Over here is an alcove. Here is another bed in the curtain.
The curtain's here.
I
Okay.
go to this alcove, which, you couldn't see who was in the entryway.
But that's where the door in and out is?
Yeah, I made sure the door was shut.
And that's a window looking outside.
Over on his side, yeah.
On this side, there's a window. What's out there? Is he
The
up
front
high?
of the hospital.
Is it ground level, or is he up high, or what?
No,
No, I mean the floor. Is the floor ground level, or are you like?
Oh,
5
no, we were
stories
up on forgotten if we were second or third floor now.
Okay, so it's just looking out at the front of the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, continue.
So
he says, "Is there anyone else here?"
Yeah.
First he waves you off.
yeah, and I'm coming. Well, you have to pretend that you're on the bed,
Right.
And I'm coming. With this, and he said, I'm back there where the
Right.
other twin bed is. No, he says, come here. I have a secret to tell you. He says, put me in the bed. I said, what? This is closer. Okay, I was about like this, and he's in the
Right.
bed a little bit higher than that. He says, and I think there was a chair here, and he says, I'm Dan. I have a secret to tell you.
He says, "I have a secret to tell you."
I'm Dan Cooper. And he didn't say Dan Cooper. He said, I'm Dan Cooper. I said, what?
She said it really slow, like.
Yeah, Cooper. He cooed it out.
Uh-huh.
And I said, what? I said, I know that you used another name before, but I never heard of that one. Then the rest of the conversation is sort of like lost to me, but not completely. He tried to explain to me who Dan Cooper again was, talked again about jumping out of a plane, the same thing as he said when we were going to the
Right.
hospital.
Right.
And I didn't understand what in the hell he was talking about. I mean, I just had found out that he would die in 5 days.
Right.
Okay, I'm still digesting that. Now I'm digesting him telling me, I'm Dan Cooper, and I said, who the hell is that, And so I was basically patronizing him.
Meaning you were saying, listen, everything's okay.
Yeah,
You're gonna be fine.
yeah, I mean,
And at this point, is he telling you about check the van, or was that later on?
No, that's in the same conversation.
All in the same conversation.
All in the same
He's
conversation.
trying to explain everything to you, and he's telling you check the van.
Yeah, and whenever that's when he told me to be sure and check the van over real good. He told me where to look in the van, but it's lost.
He told you where to look. Okay.
It's lost.
Yeah.
Lost.
You're dealing with so much information.
It was too much, too fast.
Right.
here I am. He's telling me all this. I'm thinking he's totally lost it. Yet he was talking perfectly clear to that doctor and nurse.
Right.
Just 10 minutes before,
Right. 10 minutes
if that long.
Right.
And I'm not understanding where this is going. And I didn't pay attention. I should have paid more attention. I didn't, because it seems so crazy. If I had known who Dan Cooper was.
Oh, right. But at the time, you're looking back at it now with hindsight, but I'm thinking at the time, walk me through. At the time.
Yeah, well, I can't remember what all he did say. He did talk about being sure, and I cut him off. I said, I know you hide things in the van. Mm-hmm. So he probably told me exactly where it was. I didn't hear it.
Mm-hmm. He didn't say what was in there. He just said check it.
If he did, I didn't hear it. Maybe because I didn't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. Or I thought he was crazy. I don't know what I thought.
All of a sudden he's talking all this stuff about planes and Dan Cooper and aliens you never heard of.
Right, after maybe 20 to 25 minutes of trying to explain to me what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. He talked about a plane, jumping out of a plane. And he tried to tell me. I didn't want to hear it, I guess. And then finally he said, "Oh, fuck! Let it die!" It was loud. And he had this big, deep baritone voice. Mm-hmm. The nurses come busting through that door and, wanted to know what was wrong. They thought I had done something to upset him.
Right.
But it was, oh, fuck, let it die with me. And they start doping him up.
So that's what the John Dower interview should have been like. But
yes, I definitely agree with that. I'm really impressed by that, Tim. One of the things I find really interesting about Jo and Dwayne is if you would have talked to me about it 5 years ago, I would have said, oh my gosh, I don't want to hear anything more about Dwayne. Mm-hmm. Joe's crazy. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to that. Mm-hmm. I've changed on that in the last few years, especially the Hyacinth store. Do you know this story?
Well, she told me about the Hyacinth store, and I'm trying to figure that out, so you tell me.
She posts on the Dropzone, I want to say in 2013, about the break-in at the Hyacinth store that night, the night of the skyjacking. And it potentially being Dwayne and blah, blah, blah. No one even paid attention to it at all because it came from Jo.
Right.
And we have all these FBI files being released now. And boom, there was a break-in at the store the night of the hijacking in the Dropzone. And it happened exactly as Jo said it did. How did she know about that before anyone else knew about it?
She knows quite a bit of stuff. I have not gone through those files, by the way. It's just one of those things I refuse to do. So, yeah, you're telling me, because that's one of the Hyacinth store was one of those things that she started. I don't remember the 2013 postings. That would probably change my perspective a little bit. The first time I remember her talking about it was a little later after that, and the way she was able to describe it, and I thought, did you look it up on Google? Like, how did I wasn't quite sure. And she said she had talked to the people that worked there and owned it. She told me that he took her by there actually on the trip of the. And the thing with Jo is I never know quite what to believe and what not to believe. So I'm confident that 9 out of 10 things she says are going to be BS. But if you throw the whole thing out, you're going to miss a lot. And so it's one of those, like you said, you would have chalked it up to nothing or whatever, and she's crazy. But I'm not. I have to kind of process the Hyacinth store because I'm not sure what to make of that. I have to find the file and read it.
Well, as someone who was just a lurker on the Dropzone, her story seemed so malleable. And
well, yeah, that's part of the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she was trying to weave every little thing was every little thing. DB Cooper, every little thing. It's pareidoia, or whatever. Where it's she sees patterns where they don't exist, and everything's her husband, everything. Oh, you think Kenny did it? Yeah, he knew a Kenny. They probably did it together. Like, okay, come on. This is asinine.
Yeah.
Right? And so, as my friend said, she's her own worst advocate. She'd advocate for her own interest and yet terrible at it.
What made you, I mean, obviously you were into Jo's story from the beginning. I mean, you would travel to interview her. What sold you on Duane Weber?
Well, so really where this began, and I showed you where at the end of that clip they talked about he buried the money in a bucket and couldn't find the bucket. That's the way it was phrased. And I just had a real hard problem with that. But at the same time, I thought it's quite compelling that here's a guy who confesses, and they run him through a database, and it just so happens that his face is the best match. It just so happened. I mean, that's just luck, right? So I'm thinking that can't be just pure like coincidence. So what is really going on here? That the curiosity got the cat. So I really started to chew on this for months and months. And then she talked about how they took this sentimental journey, and this is in the U.S. News and World Report article. And I think, so here's another coincidence. They take a trip in the months before this money's found, and she has this story about going to the river or whatever. And I'm not sure what I think about that story in particular, but maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. I don't know. I'm not one to necessarily disagree.
I agree with you on that, but I will interject and say it's the only story with an explanation.
Well, that's kind of where I'm going with this. It's like, okay, how'd the money get there? No one knows. And I thought, it's interesting. She tells a story about the river, and here's what she would tell me. She says, look, he couldn't find the money. He buried it in a bucket. He couldn't find the bucket. He must have buried it on the Columbia River, and a flood dislodged it, or something dislodged it. Construction dislodged it. Something happened, and it floated down the stream, and some of it washed up, and that's the end of the story. That was her pitch to me. And I just thought about that, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought, that doesn't jive. It doesn't jive. And another thing, you're telling me then that this trip in the months before the money's found is just pure chance, it's pure coincidence? So, in other words, her own story to me was undermining her own her own story, because in her mind, the sentimental journey, which is based on the Doris Day song, by the way, was what was special about that to her was how he knew the area. He's driving around, no map, pointing stuff out. Hey, we used to do this over there, blah 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 blah. Right, going around talking about different stuff. Over there, that's where D.B. Cooper came out of the woods. What? How would you know that? Now, Bruce Smith has a misquote in his book. He says, maybe I was his ground man. That's not the, you got to get this right, because Dwayne had a way of being very clever, very ambiguous in his wording, very selective. And he says, she says, how do you know that? And he says, maybe I was the one on the ground. So, which you could take multiple ways. He's not saying maybe I was the one in the air, maybe I was the one on the plane. He's saying maybe I was the one on the ground. Well, if you stop and think about it, the one on the ground is the one in the air, is the one on the plane, right? Unless you're thinking that it's this tag team duo or something. I don't know. So it's the way he phrases it. What I'm trying to say is that her story was that it was significant what he was doing there and saying there, but the fact that they're there months before the money is discovered on the river, that must just be pure chance. And I looked at that and said, I don't know if that's pure chance. I don't know. I don't know what I think about this. You're telling me I start doing these mental experiments, thought experiments. Okay, let's say he goes down, he finds it, it's all soggy or something, and he chucks it in the river, it goes down. All right, so what happens? Okay, so the packs go down. They're going to spread out. The packs are going to spread out. I'm telling you, after they found that money, the people all up and down that Columbia River are looking for stuff. They're all up and down that river. Nothing ever shows up anywhere else except for this 1 square foot, right? So, yeah, I'm not buying this story, Joe. Tell me more. And this is over the course of a span of time. You got to tell me more. Tell me more about this trip. I need to know more about this trip. And the beauty of Jo, so we talk about how she's crazy and the beauty of that's actually a feature. and not so much a detriment as you would think. Because I'm sitting here like, oh my God, the stuff she's posted online, how am I ever going to clean this up? It's an impossible task. But from my perspective, because she didn't understand her own narrative to a large extent, it allowed me to kind of sneak in and ask questions about things she wasn't even paying attention to. She wasn't even on her radar. She's busy telling me about, I don't know, CIA stuff. And I'm busy asking about like real pertinent stuff. Okay. Okay. And I know whether he was CIA, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I think it's probably more far-fetched than reality, but who knows? But anyway, the point is, if there was something she didn't understand and I would ask her about it, and I know she doesn't understand it, and she's giving me answers, I trust it way more because she didn't have the opportunity to put her own belief system onto her answer. Like she didn't have a chance to convince herself of something that maybe didn't happen or paint it in a certain way, if that makes sense.
It does.
I'm trying to think of an example here. So yeah, I would walk her through. Tell me about when you were at the Dalles. So this is the other thing in the HBO. They conflated three different stops into one stop, and it's just like totally butchered the story. It's fine. I'm not mad about it or anything. It's just aggressive editing. They did a lot of aggressive editing. I gave them sound bites, and in the middle of the sound bite, they'd cut it off. You put the first half leading, you put the setup in there, and then you leave anyway. But I digress. So, the Dalles was their first stop. They left. They drove to Salt Lake City. They did a little touring. I can't believe how fast that guy must have driven. Okay. Insane. How fast that guy must have driven. Which is why he had a CB radio in his car. And his CB handle was world's largest jockstrap. And she just thought that was the most vile thing. Well, in hindsight, she thought, I wonder if he was referring to something else. So anyhow, so they do a little sightseeing in Salt Lake City. They drive from there all the way to the Dalles. And they did this all in one day. And they get to the Dalles. And the next morning, he gets up. And he says, I got some business to take care of. And he leaves, and it's not even, the sun's not even up yet. So he takes off, 5 in the morning or something. And he misses checkout time by an hour, then another hour. Now she's on the phone trying to call the highway patrol and see if there's car accidents. She's freaked out. He said he's going to be back. He's not back. And this is, of course, before cell phones and all that. So it's like, you don't know where he went. Did he drive off the bridge of the gods or something? What happened to him? So, so he finally pulls up, and he's got these the Dickies overalls on. And he's like, I got to go in the room and wash up real quick. So he goes in there and wash up. And it seems like his hands and clothes are a bit dirty, as if he's been, doing something. And and then the rest of the journey that you hear about was that day. And let's see, I actually have the timeline. I can give you exact dates on this, which took me years, by the way, to figure out. That was on August 29th. August 29th, 1979 was the day that he woke up at the Dalles, and they go through this whole excursion there in the east side of Clark County there, and or at least that's where she now believes that they were at the time. You have no idea how much documentation she has or had, but I've got recordings of her before she ever went out to the Northwest to try to retrace her steps and some of the things she was saying then, and she's describing. So he takes her on this excursion, and then they drive up to Seattle, and that's that. Now, a couple days later, let's see, the next day they toured at the company headquarters, which was at Park Place up there in Seattle, and that was the night that they had the dinner at the Space Needle. So the two of them went up to the Space Needle on August the 30th. Now, on August 31st, they had a meeting in a separate venue somewhere else, and he says he's going to take a shortcut. And he drives all the way down, goes south, and she said, what the hell are we doing out here? She pulls out a map finally, and is like, this is not a shortcut for where we're going. Why are we on this big detour? He's like, don't worry about it. And they're literally behind the SeaTac airport. And he's looking at the fence. He's like, the fence has changed or something like that. Something to that effect. And this is not a shortcut. What are we doing here? And only in hindsight does she. But he started telling her about this ice cream shop that was down the street there that his other wife liked to visit. And I thought that was interesting. Let's see. So then on September the 1st, which was a Saturday, he went missing for who knows. She wakes up. He's not there. She goes around looking for him all day. She goes to the pool hall that's down the street. Have you seen Dwayne? No, we haven't seen him. Where is he? And they've got this banquet that night for the awards. It's the last night of the event in Seattle. Where is he? Is he going to show up? So it's kind of like the Dows again, all over again. Like she doesn't know where he is. She puts out his Johnny Carson 3-piece suit and is kind of waiting for him in the room. Well, he does show up. And when he shows up, he's so elated that she says, "Oh my God, you've been drinking all day. That's what you've been doing. You've been drinking all day." He goes, "Nope, come here, smell it." And he's like blowing on her, and I'm like, "Smell my breath." I'm like, haven't had a single drink. It's like, well, why are you so happy? He doesn't say. He's like, all right, I'm gonna take a picture. He gets his Johnny Carson suit on, and you saw in the HBO documentary where they showed the picture. And she's like, "I'm gonna take the picture of you." He's like, "All right, say cheese." He goes, "Geronimo." Right? Geronimo, it's an interesting thing. As a kid, we used to say that whenever we were going to, jump off the playground or whatever. And the term goes back to World War II. That's what the paratroopers would say as they're jumping out of the back of the plane or whatever. So interesting choice of words. And the picture does exist. You can see he's quite elated. He's got his hands open like he's getting it ready for a free fall. Is it proof? No, but it's interesting. It's insightful for me because what was going on that day? And the conclusion that I reached, not only do we have these problems with how did the money get to Tina's bar, right? And the more she kept talking, then she tells me about the next day. Okay, so Sunday. Tell me about Sunday. We get up and we drive. We're driving back home, and we stopped at the Red Lion. Well, first she says they stopped at the river, and the approximate location she believed they were at was a Winter Park. And she says she fell asleep in the car. And when she wakes up, he's kind of coming towards the car. And then they go to the Red Lion there in Vancouver. And they're going around the parking lot, or they pull in, and he's got this paper sack in the car. And he starts telling her where the concessions are and where the bathroom is. Like, go in there. There's a food machine. There's some bathrooms in there. He's basically telling her as if he's already been there before. Like, how does he know this? So she goes in, and when she comes out, he's out in the back looking at the river. She's like, "Well, what are you doing out here?" "Oh, I'm just watching that bag go down the river." She freaks out, and she goes around and searches all the trash cans in the parking lot, and they're all empty. And as I believe I said in the documentary, if he had, assuming what I believe to be the case, which is that Saturday when he went missing, I think he went back and he actually could not find the money the first time. And then somehow he came back, gave it another shot, found it, and was just ecstatic. And sadly, though, after being in the ground for 8 years or whatever, 7 years or whatever it was, some of this money was damaged and they couldn't, that's how it got compressed. That's my opinion. I believe that's how it got compressed. It was smashed down in this bucket, like a 5-gallon bucket, right? So he's got this money that he can't get it apart. So he's like, fuck it. And puts it in a bag. And instead of chucking it in the trash, where probably no one ever looks, he decides to get all cute and tosses it in the river. So this is what I believe happened. I and like you said, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I haven't heard a better explanation. And I've tried to work it out. If somebody has a better explanation, be my guest. So from that, I established that the money was out on the river somewhere for 161 days. Precisely. Now, we're recording this on February 13th. Of course, you're not listening to this on February 13th, but do you know what happened on February 13th?
No.
Okay, so February 13th is the day that the money find was on the front page of every newspaper in America. And I do happen to have that. Sorry. Any questions?
Yeah, because the find was February 8th, right?
10th.
10th, okay.
Yeah, I actually, I texted you, like I looked at the clock and was like, oh, yeah, 41st anniversary. That's like within the hour, pretty much. That's the thing, man. I'm like swimming in this thing. I can't let it go. You can either choose to read it on the air or not. But anyway, so there's the front page of the Denver Post, which is the newspaper he got. Now she tells me the story of how that happened. Now in the meantime, in the interim, between the paper sack and this, so he gets home in early September. There, and I believe he has the ransom money with him. And I believe he hid it in the house somewhere. Then about 3 weeks later, he starts shopping for a new car. So he buys a new car, even though he had just got a new car months prior. So he's like,
What kind of car was it?
It was a Mercury Marquise, 1980. So
Not a great vehicle.
well, yeah, I think he.
I'm sure it was great in 1980.
Yeah, in 1980. But what did he have before that? He had a Seville. Yeah, he had a Seville. Anyway, so who cares what car he had? I have pictures of all of them. But anyway, she describes how she was making him breakfast and she went out to the driveway, got the paper, and she opens it up. Oh, they found that guy's money. What guy's money? D.B. Cooper. What? And she starts to like read the article, and she gets like part way in, and he's asking for if he can have it when she's done or whatever. And at some point in there, he made a comment that the money was worthless. I'm not entirely sure how that was brought up in the conversation, if it was early, because I mean, pretty quick, if you're reading this, you can figure out that it was rotting away and decaying. And the pictures, of course, show it. She says he didn't have a chance to see this, so he did not know that it was actually worthless. How did he know it was worthless, she says. He left the house. He took the paper with him. She never saw it again. Now, let's just suppose, entertain the idea that he actually was D.B. Cooper, right? Or whoever D.B. Cooper was, that he was alive and he found out that his money was found on the Columbia River. What do you do? What's your next move?
I would just keep quiet.
Okay. Sure. You're going to keep quiet. I think his next move is, all right, let's go check out all the newspapers that we have. And I think he probably went to the store and maybe check out the Rocky Mountain News. Okay, so Rocky Mountain News. And you're welcome to read this.
Where was Joe living at the time in 1980?
About 40 minutes from you. And
really?
Yeah, I could take you there if you wanted to drive. It's a special place for me because I stand outside that house. And, for your audience who is not quite as sure as I am, I sit there and I look at this house. And I'm like, I know that for 6 months, that ransom money was in that house. Now, maybe the audience is like, okay, well, I don't know that, but I do. I know that. So it's one of those things that him and I know and no one else knows. Anyway, at the end of the AP article, so the Denver Post picked up the LA Times article, and the Rocky Mountain News picked up the AP. And at the very tail of the AP article, I'll let you read that, because that's really the crux of it. I really think this. Remember, this is the day. This is before Google. Information was quite scarce, and so he's getting a lot of information off these articles. So go ahead and read that last paragraph there. It's at the bottom.
In 1977, just to make sure the hijacker didn't escape prosecution via the statute of limitations, he was indicted on federal charges in absentia.
Yeah, it's my belief that that's the first he knows he's fucked.
Yes. I would definitely agree with that, because that didn't get publicized, really. And I mean, even people who are familiar with the case, I'll say, the John Doe indictment. And they're like, what?
Right, they don't know that.
They don't know that.
So I've wondered why. Okay, so this is one of the things. Why would you bury money and leave it for so long? Why did you bury the money and leave it in the first place? Like, there's all these questions I have. She's given me so many stories, too, about his car might have been at SeaTac. That was her first story. I think that's probably true, that his car was parked at SeaTac and he was hoping to parachute out early and then just get to his car and drive off. It didn't work out that way. I don't think he was necessarily planning to jump out where he did, but maybe that was part of the plan. It was certainly It certainly added to the mystery. It certainly made the story what it was. I think if he jumps out in the city, he's screwed. They're going to find him. But it worked out. It worked out. But now, whether you think it's Dwayne or you think it's someone else, right? If they're reading that, that's likely the first time they know they're screwed. So one of my questions is, why would you leave the money in there why would you leave it out there for so long? I think maybe part of that could have been statute of limitations. I'm just going to let that run out, and when I'm safe, I'll go get it. I don't have to worry anymore. They can't touch me. I think he probably believed that. Maybe he just didn't need to go out there. I don't know. It seems weird that he waited so long, and clearly it cost him something because if I'm right, that money got some of the money got compressed in the bucket, and he couldn't get it apart, and so he's just like, oh, screw it, I'm just going to chuck this.
That makes sense. The money was sort of already in a state of decay, and it's why it didn't spread.
Well, yeah, I think it was already compacted. I think the compaction part happened in the bucket for 8 years, and the rest of it probably was good. That's my best. Not all of it was bad. All right. So yeah, that was 41 years ago today, February 13th.
So when Dwayne gets the money and he says to Jo, it's worthless. The money that he got, do you think he could have spent any of that, or you think money was just garbage as well?
No. I think he kept. So here's what I think. So in the hospital, he said his exact words. I'll give you the exact quote. This is what he said, because there was kind of a misunderstanding, and it took me a while to figure this out. The way Jo says it is like, yeah, he was talking about burying the money in a bucket, and he couldn't find the bucket, and we assume that he meant he never found the bucket. His actual quote, and Anfos was in the room with him, and he was kind of out of it. He was drugged up, and he's just talking. He says, I buried $178,000 in a bucket, and I couldn't find the bucket. Actually, the exact quote is, I couldn't find the goddamn bucket. So, past tense, couldn't. I think he clearly did find the bucket. I think he clearly found the money. I think the money that he put in the paper bag was the stuff that was damaged. He took the rest with him. There is more to the story, but I'm not gonna go there right now. I do believe, though, when they returned back home, he had, so let's see, 22,000 minus another 6. Yeah, so he's got what's that work out to be? 170 something G's in the house, just cold hard cash sitting somewhere in that house. I have wanted to go in there and look, because I have a hypothesis that his office was upstairs in the spare bedroom, and I have a hypothesis that the attic access was in his closet, and perhaps that's where he was keeping it. There was also a cold storage down in the basement. I've never been in the house. I've wanted to go in there. I once actually wrote the tenants that are in there, and they didn't want anything to do with me. So I haven't, but I haven't.
I love that.
Yeah, I haven't tried again. There's been the switched over a few times since then. But sorry, I feel like I'm not being very linear. I'm being like Jo. I'm jumping around too much. She is the least linear thinking person I have ever come across. It's unreal. You have no idea that this should not. What I know right now, if this were 20 years ago, I could literally go to the FBI and say, okay, here's what I know. I'm going to give you exact stuff, so exact details. I want you to take these and in an hour you'll have this solved. If it's not an hour, it'll be 2-3 days at the most. Like, you can have this solved that fast, and your picture will be all over, the office, and everyone will think you're the hero. Sadly, though, they've closed the case. 20 years has gone by. There's a lot of question marks. There's some stuff I don't know.
Why are you more confident 20 years ago than you are now?
Yeah, that's things can happen. Things can happen. You might know where something was 20 years ago, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's there now. So,
and I get that to an extent. I tell people when they ask me, like, who was D.B. Cooper? I'll say I'm more unsure now than I was when I started looking into who D.B. Cooper was.
So just so we know, and this will make me sound like an ass, but I mean, I'm 100% confident. I would bet my last heartbeat, and that's there's reasons for that. From one perspective, you might say, well, you've been in it so long that you convinced yourself, and it's impossible. I don't know about that. if you think about a theory, okay, so let's talk about a theory. How do you classify? No, I don't necessarily mean a D.B. Cooper theory. I mean a theory in general. How do you tell a good theory from a bad theory? Or say you have two theories. How do you decide which theory is better than the other theory?
Research and proof.
Okay, so proof. How do you define proof?
Well, I guess it depends what theories you're talking about. But
Well,
you just have to
like physics or popular theories that I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm trying to. One thing you got to know about me is I will ask a lot of questions. I learned that from my psychology professor, Elizabeth Loftus. She would always ask before she'd tell. It's pretty funny. She'd get you to commit before she'd give it to you. So I do that. So I'm not trying to be annoying or anything. I'm trying to get you to think about before I say it. How do you know a good theory from a bad theory, just in general?
Well, I mean, when it comes to D.B. Cooper, it's what I know, really.
Okay, so you're taking information of observations, right? Observations. What you know is observations, things that you can observe in the record and say, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, right? That's how all theories work. It's like, okay, why does the moon orbit the Earth, right? So you got these observations, and you have to try to come up with an explanation. Why does this work? And there was people who had this Earth-centric view of the universe, and Copernicus is looking and saying, guys, that doesn't make sense. Well, God wouldn't have set it up any other way. Well, yeah, I'm not so sure about that. And that guy waited until he was literally on his deathbed before he let that out. There's something to that. But a good theory is one that not only can explain what you're seeing, but then makes predictions. So D.B. Cooper is in the past. So you don't have predictions, you have retrodictions, things that you can look for and find. And I have come to view the way my interaction is with this case as very theoretical like that. I don't use the word theory, I use model, because a theory is a model, and the word theory is just tossed out casually so much, colloquially, so that the true meaning of it is it's like a functioning model of how to see and perceive what you're looking at. Hence why I'm looking at, like, how did the money get there? Did the bucket really get dislodged in a flood? It doesn't make sense. So I'm like, it's not jiving. So that's where the theory starts. And now I've got motive. The money's already damaged. So it means he's on the river on September the 2nd, 1979. Opportunity, he's right there. Motive means opportunity is all there. Means, the paper bag. It's all there, right? I can give you motive, means, and opportunity. That's pretty good. That's more than, I don't know. Name me another suspect that can give you motive, means, and opportunity for money being on the river. I don't know.
I don't believe there is one.
Yeah, so that's one reason why I think I was really, really hooked to this particular suspect from the get-go, was because Joe's trying to tell me that it's coincidental, and I'm listening to the stories, and I'm like trying to piece this together, and I'm thinking, here I am. I'm coming up with motive, means, and opportunity, and I don't know, and that's a coincidence too. So you got the facial recognition, you got the confession, and then you got this trip, I don't know if this is really coincidence. It's going to be really tough. It's like when they came out with the DNA stuff, I'm like, oh man, I guess it's just one of those flukes. I got it wrong, And then I started thinking about it. Well, did we get it wrong? Because you need to have two things. You need to know for sure you've got D.B. Cooper's DNA. Then you need to know for sure you've got the suspect's DNA. And if you're not sure about either or both of those, your results aren't really as ironclad as they sound in the newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know the DNA that they talk about. They say Dwayne and LD were the only two compared. But do they have a DNA sample?
Right.
It seems like they don't.
Right. Now, I can tell you that they took several of Dwayne's items. Some of the items had been tainted or used by other people. But because they took several items, they were pretty convinced that they actually had his profile. And I have a lot of those items still with me, and I've seen like the wrappings and stuff. One of them is like his mouthpiece and his bridge, and he's got a pair of like gloves and wristwatch. Now, of course, the wristwatch, oh boy, she's got his wristwatch, and I've worn it. She's worn it. It's like, we're tainting the tainting the evidence, so to speak. But we don't know if we have DB Cooper's DNA, and I'll even say that's true now, even after I don't know what you know about you're going to know more about Ulysses' discovery there that they televised than I'm going to know.
Well, Ulysses and Tom K's discovery was they found DNA on the tie. The DNA belonged to Tom K.
That was one of my hypotheses. I was actually thinking about that. I was going to ask you exactly that. I was washing the dishes. I'm like, well, you need to check if it's Tom K's DNA. He's the obvious guy to check. That's real sad. That's real sad to me. But it
is real sad.
It's predictable.
Remember, Eric actually, he probably won't mind me saying this, but he called me when they found DNA on the tie. And he was like, dude, we've got it. We've got DB Cooper's DNA. This is going to be great. You can't say anything until the show comes out, but we got it. Mm-hmm. And then, so for a year, I thought, okay, we've got DB Cooper's DNA. This is going to be case closed at some point. It's going to be great. Then the show comes out, and Tom K posts, hey, don't get too excited about the DNA from the show. It's mine. It was a mistake. And then they left it in the show because, it's exciting.
It's sensational. I can tell you I got about 3 phone calls. And I'm the guy that's like quiet. No one knows who I am. I was getting phone calls about that. And when I saw that, I thought, oh man, at first I thought, wow, I'm going to bump the chances of this thing getting solved up to 50%. And we can figure this out real quick. I could just call them up and ask them, listen, take a look at your profile. Is there PKD gene mutations in it or not? If there is, we're gold. If not, well, yeah, you got someone else's DNA. Now I know that's it's kind of that's one of those like logical things that people hiss at me about. But I truly believe that was his tie. Tom K has proven that to me. And by the way, him and I have never spoken. My first video on YouTube was a message to him, trying to give him some encouragement. I had high hopes for him, and I didn't want him to get kind of beat up by all the people who have all their little pet theories and stuff. The way I felt like that. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. I would assume he saw the message I posted on the DZ.
Well, the DZ got so nasty.
Yeah,
and it's such a wild place. I never posted on the DZ. I just looked because I didn't have a theory or anything myself. I was just really fascinated by it. And I remember checking it out like every few weeks, and it'd be 45 new pages, and people posting in the middle of the night and doxing each other before that was a word. It was a wild place, and Joe and Robert really were relentless. Would be the word.
Yeah, and it's so silly. It's so silly for God. I tried to tell her just go. Stop doing this, Joe. Stop doing this. Boy. Anyway, so there were, it turns out, there were about 4 different ways to solve this. And if you were to ask me 5 years ago, I would have said there's no way to solve it. The 4th way would have been that DNA on the tie. So if that's out, there's really 1 bullet left, and it is a massive long shot. That's all I got to say. It's a massive long shot. But like I said, if it was 20 years ago, I'd have a lot of confidence. And I have something that I could have actually, like, actionable intelligence. Joe would complain to the FBI. I've got recordings of all her conversations with the agents and stuff. She recorded everything, and they were willing to listen. But she's like, "Can you investigate?" Well, investigate what? What am I supposed to investigate? You got to give me something to investigate. Investigate this guy. Well, what's that look like? You got to give me something. What, do you want me to search your house? What do you want me to do? And she had this theory for the longest time that his money, she thought it was suspicious. This is just show you that she would hold beliefs that were opposing and not even like recognize it. She believed that whoever purchased, the guy that purchased the van after he died, somehow came into a bunch of money and was going on this big spending spree. So she was under the impression that Dwayne had loot of some sort hidden in the van. And it's funny because I felt like I could, so when I said it, there's a theory, and I could call it a model. My models basically follow the money from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E, right? So I'm trying to trace his steps and look at his behavior, and it all starts to make sense. Well, at the end of this trail is like, what the hell happened to the money? Where's the money? There should be, you're telling me he spent it all? Where did he spend it all? So I didn't know. It was like this black hole. And I kind of didn't have anywhere to go with that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just take Joe's word for it. Big mistake. But it's a good mistake in the sense that I explored it. I said, all right, I play poker. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to semi-bluff this guy. I'm going to send him a letter. I'm going to say, look, I know where the money was in the van. I know where in the van it was. I know where it was at certain points of time, and I know where it was in the van. Listen, you bought it fair and square. It's yours. Don't feel guilty, right? He called me 5 minutes after he got that. And this is interesting. I'll always remember this day. It's the day I found out I was going to be a parent. And I'm sitting there, reading an essay by Wikipedia founder Larry Sanger. He's talking about teaching his kids to read. And I'm like trying to cue myself up on how I'm going to raise my kids. And I get this phone call. And we start talking. And sadly, I did not record the call because I really wish I did. I tried so many ways to trap that guy, to give him so many outs, and none of it was working. And I remember just hanging up the phone and just thinking, there's a point in time when a poker player might be in the middle of the hand, and you got to ask yourself, is this guy even capable of pulling a bluff like that? Like, is he capable of lying that well? No. So I said, no. Joe's wrong. I talked to this guy, talked to the guy about the van. He didn't find money in the van. I don't know what happened to the money. So that was like the last day. I said, all right, that's it. That's it. And I tried to go out and help Joe. Like, Joe, listen, I'm going to be a parent here in a few months. If you want me to come out, now's the time. No, I'm not going to be alive that much longer. Whatever. I got this, I got that ailment, whatever. Okay, Joe, whatever. I've got to be done. I got to be done with this. So I officially kind of broke off my time with the whole DB Cooper thing, and I was moving on to a new chapter in my life.
Did that dude ever find anything in the van?
Yes. So he did find Dwayne's secret wallet. Now, let's talk about how that might have happened. The driver captain chair, the driver's seat was bloodstained from driving to and from, places. And so he took that out and he put one of the seats from the back into the front. And Joe's hypothesis is that it was somehow in the seat, hidden in the seat, because she searched and never found anything. And he finds this wallet and tells her, I found this wallet. It's got some of IDs in it. When she shows up at his house, or he showed up at her house, I can't remember which, and she says, what's in it? He says, I don't know. I didn't look. So she now suspicious. Well, you told me on the phone that he's got these IDs in there. And she's like, I have his IDs. I don't know what you're talking about. And now you're telling me that. So she was suspicious of this guy, right off the top. Unjustly, it turns out. Gets the fake ID or gets his wallet with all these IDs in it. A span of time. One of the things she finds is a receipt for a safety deposit box.
Gosh, Dwayne is such a mysterious guy.
Oh, dude. Yeah, he's...
My wife's not going to find any mysterious stuff or receipts for her safety deposit boxes, but I also never committed any heists.
So the reason I have it on the computer, so you can see it, you can see that it really does exist. You can vouch for me. So she finds this receipt here from the Citizens and People's National Bank of Pensacola for safety deposit box number 14. And this was held at, he had his own account when he had his own shop selling antiques and stuff. He had like a business account. So he had like a separate deal. It's under his name, Duane Weber. And she's got the key taped to the will. So she goes in and she shows them the will. And she says, my husband has a safety deposit box here. Here's the receipt. It's number 14. And they said, well, let's take a look. Oh, you're not on the account. Sorry, you can't go back there. I'm like, okay. So then what do we do? All right, well, I'm going to take the key back there and I'll empty the contents. I'll empty the contents for you and bring them to you. So they go back into the vault, open his box, This is what aggressive editing does for you, because this whole interesting part of the story is left out of the documentary. So she comes back and says, all right, here we go. Here is what... No, I have the original at my house, but this is several ones. Here you go. She's like, okay. There's a magazine, Soldier of Fortune, December 1994 issue. He died in March of 1995. So depending on when this was in the newsstand, I don't know, 3-4 months before he died. Why the hell would you put this in a safety deposit box? That's the big question. Why would you put a random magazine in your safety deposit box as if it's this special thing, right? So the first time I was out there at Joe's house, I see the magazine in one of her saying, what the heck is the story on this magazine? She says, I don't know, Tim. Open it up and you can tell me what you think. So you can open it up and tell me what you think.
I don't even know what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's just it. What are you looking for? So when she saw it, she doesn't know what she's looking for. When I saw it, I know exactly what I'm looking for. So
the man who held the secrets.
So here's the deal. So you open this to the second page, and there's a picture of a guy in free fall, and he has a duffel bag between his legs. The same way it is theorized that D.B. Cooper jumped out of the back of the plane. And then, of course, Joe being Joe, she later she put this magazine aside and just was, had no way of knowing what it was. She put it amongst his things and just left it at that. And later, after some other events that led her to call the FBI and go on her quest of her own, she looked back at this magazine and then saw this picture and wondered if he was somehow in the actual article, which I think is just bogus. That's Joe being Joe. She likes to, like I said, everything is D.B. Cooper. So she'd look at this picture and say, oh, there's this guy down here with a pipe in his mouth. That must be him. No, it's not him. But he clearly saw something in this magazine that prompted him to buy it. And then not only buy it, but to bring it to his personal safety deposit box, put it in there, and lock and key. Why? My hypothesis is he's just sending you a message. So if, no one was there in the room with them when he confessed. And in my book, this is just telling me, this is a message to me, I really did confess. He's saying that's, in a roundabout way, that's me, even though that's not him. But yeah, that's me. I got the, money between my legs, whatever. So
that's so weird that the only thing in his safety deposit box was Soldier of Fortune magazine.
Soldier of Fortune magazine, December 1994, if anyone's curious of looking at it yourself. All right, so time goes by, and she decides, all right, I'm ready to start dating. So she answers some ads, puts out an ad, what the case may be, and she meets this guy named Lee Monday, and he was a little heavyset. Blonde hair, blue eyes, otherwise dressed nice, and he was a very fine fellow, but she just, he was heavy set, and she didn't really like him that way. She didn't have the, the physical attraction, so to speak. And so she was under the impression that she had been reading this book, Surviving Widowhood, I believe. I have the book at home. She was reading this book, and it was talking about how do you know if you're over your spouse, okay? Because it's about moving on from your life after your spouse has died, and it's like, well, if you can't stop talking about them, you're not ready to move on. So she took that and said, all right, if I don't like him, I'm gonna start talking about my husband, and he'll get the idea that I'm not ready to move on. So that was kind of her thinking. So she starts telling about trip to Seattle, the confession, I'm Dan Cooper. At some point in the conversation, as she's between dinner and dessert, he says, did you ever think that he was D.B. Cooper? And what do you mean? And she hadn't heard that name in a long while, so she wasn't quite sure what he was talking about. And he's like, yeah, he hijacked this plane, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And she was in the middle of getting a real estate license, so she was studying up for that and just kind of shelved that whole thing. She shelved it. Took the test, did well on the test. As soon as she was done with the test, she calls him up. Okay, what was the name again? D.B. Cooper. Oh, okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the library. So she goes to the library, and she gets Max Gunther's book and starts reading it and gets to, I don't remember the exact page, but it's talking about Dan Cooper in the book, right? So she says, oh my gosh, yeah, this is totally it. Like, this is it. This is what he was trying to tell me. Now, she went on to believe something about that book that I don't believe, which is that Dwayne somehow, or his wife, had a hand in crafting the story. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that at all. I've tried to see her point of view, and I don't. And for the longest time, I went out there and I looked at the handwriting. Well, I'm going to let you, I'll let you do a comparison yourself. We will, I'm going to pull up here. Okay, I scanned this in yesterday on a page 116 of the book.
You have the actual book?
Yeah, I have the actual book, yeah.
I thought that was lost.
No, there are things that are lost, but the book is not lost.
You have the actual book that Joe found at the library in Florida?
Yeah, I've got the book.
How did you get the actual book?
That's a long story. I was like basically the heir to all of Joe's stuff regarding D.B. Cooper. So whatever was left, I got. She's just not in a position to use it anymore. And that's kind of a long story. That kind of played out about a year ago.
I'm really jealous of the fact that you have the actual book.
Yeah.
Like real jealous of that.
All right, so here you are. You, Darren, get to compare. On the left, I've got the scribbling in the book. And on the right, now I have more handwriting samples than just some personal checks, but I just had those ready to show you. So I've got some checks that he wrote. And you are welcome to, if you want to pause this or whatever, you can, and kind of examine and see what you think. Because I've had an opinion for a long time, and I was looking at this yesterday, and I don't know.
I don't know. It doesn't look that similar to me. I don't know. Some of it is.
Be honest with yourself. You don't feel like you got to try to please me or anybody else. Just use your own judgment here.
I don't know. I know handwriting analysis isn't exactly the most hard science, but
sure.
It doesn't look identical to me.
Right.
I would, if I had to make a bet, I would say different people wrote those.
Yeah, and that is what that's basically where I have been for many, many years. And so that you've got this story about, his handwriting in the book. And I've thought, I don't think so. I'll tell you what sells me on not his handwriting is in all of his handwriting samples that I have, he always writes his A's like this. Whereas here you see an A and here you see an A, and they are written totally different.
Oh, yeah.
Now, where that changes slightly is when in his signature, the A in his signature is, so there's one signature, and then down here, I'll show you another signature. So you can see in his signature, he crafts it differently, more similar to what you see in the book.
Yeah, but my signature isn't my handwriting.
Right. Now, I was looking at this last night, and I thought, okay, Joe, I do see your point. Number one, the slant is left-handed slant, the way it's slanted. So it appears to be written by someone left-handed. If you look at this P right here,
the Peddler's shop, was that Dwayne's antique store?
So the Peddler's shop was Dwayne's antique store, yes. And we will be talking about the Peddler's shop here in just a minute. I looked at it and I'm like, okay, yeah, the slant. You got the Y coming down now. The Y curves to the left. Here, here it actually curves to the right. But it's very. I can see the similarity. I do see where she was convinced that this was his handwriting. I am less than convinced that this is his handwriting. But to each, I do see the similarity. So I'm not an expert, but I'm not willing to stake my reputation on the handwriting match in the Max Gunther book. Right,
and it's a library book.
Yeah, any number of people had it. The point she was trying to say is that what's the odds that I'm getting this book and his handwriting's in it? He clearly had read it before, and it was because of that handwriting that she purposely kept the book and never returned it and just paid the fine. All right, so we brought up the Peddler's shop. So so she calls the FBI, and the rest is kind of known from there. Let's go back to when he had the Peddler's shop. He opened this, I believe, in 1989. And at first, Jo was helping out with the books, and she just it wasn't really doing all that great, according to the recordings. I have some of them here. I've got some snippets. She kept an audio diary, and I have those audios. So I have, like I said, there's.
If she kept an audio diary, I bet that is quite lengthy.
Not as lengthy as you think, because there was actually tape, and she had to buy tape, and she would record over stuff and lose stuff and what have you. But about the time when he started to get sick and needed dialysis, things really got sketchy for her. She was really. He started to scare her. He seemed to be losing his mind. Like, she couldn't understand what was going on. He is on Social Security. He doesn't get very much money. He's got this peddler shop, and she thinks he's trying really hard to be a provider, but he's not a provider. And she's running the books. The books are in the red. A lot of the stuff is in her name, and that goes back to an incident that happened with a wife before her. The wife before her got a judgment on him, and he filed for bankruptcy to avoid whatever obligation. And I've reached out to the family and tried to ask about that, and I've yet to get a response. I'm sure they would be quite insightful if they would talk to me, but not everyone wants to talk, and anyone who ever tried to talk to the ex-wife got berated on the phone. So we don't really know what the judgment was for. But I do know he went bankrupt purposely to avoid paying her money. So because of that, the items that they owned were in her name. So she didn't have to be part of that. So they still, that's how they, he bought the van and everything. The van was in her name, etc.
Seems like a pretty standard move.
Yeah. I don't know if it was a dick move or not, because I don't know if he really screwed over his ex-wife or what the deal is. I don't know, but I will tell you, if you listen to the audio diaries from back then, it's pretty interesting. Like, there's a sequence of events that takes place. He goes on a spending spree, and she's freaked out about that. He's seeing a psychologist, which is almost acting like a marriage counselor at one point, and he's telling the marriage counselor, or psychologist, I should say, that's what he was. She's all worried about this, and it's nothing to be worried about. I've got everything handled. She's like, how do you have everything handled? This is nuts. Anyway, so he's telling people, here's a clip.
I know that he is trying to do the best he can to pull his end of making a living. I know that it has to be humiliating for a man to know that his wife is having to support him. Although he ought to know that I couldn't have done without what he has done with our income this year. And I know that he realizes that there's not much life insurance. And I know he's saying and telling other people that he wants to make sure I'm set for life, that I'll have something to take care of me when he's gone. If he would just take time to smell the roses, for God's sake, and be happy. Everything else will take care of itself.
So I don't know if you could make out what she said, but she said he was telling people that she was going to be set for life, and didn't have to worry about anything. And this does make no sense to her. She's like, he has life insurance, but it's not that much money. A few like $10,000 or something. Like, what are you talking about? What is he talking about? That's a good question. So that's a question I'd pose to the audience. What is he talking about here? And I will keep going. Okay, so here's where she's talking about how she was running the shop and it wasn't making money. And then he kicks her out of the shop. She wasn't allowed back in the shop. He didn't want her anywhere near the shop. Next thing you know, he's posting that he's saying that his shop is making all this money. And she is freaked out because the shop is in her name, and she feels like he's about to blow up financially, and she's on the hook. And she's trying to have conversations with him about this, and he's just getting frustrated about it. Come on, seriously. You have nothing to worry about. I will share more. Hold on. We'll keep going. Okay, listen to this audio recording here.
Tuesday night, 9:25. I'm leaving the shop now. I went by to see how he had his teeth removed and how he was feeling. Everything went pleasant. He mentioned the books on the shop and said that he had everything done. It showed a $2,700 profit. I know for a fact there was not a $2,700 profit on those shops with the way this looks, the point that I left them. In fact, it was in the red, not positive. He immediately became hostile, saying that he had the locks changed after that incident with the knives, when in fact I'm sure they were changed prior to that. I don't know what to do at this point. I have a right to see those books. I have a right to know what's going on. And it looks like he's not leaving me too many alternatives but to do what has to be done. I love him, but I don't know any other way to handle this. He threatened to blow me away. Tell me to get the hell out. Looks like I'm going to have to take a court order and shut him down. He's not leaving any alternative.
Anyway, you get the idea.
He doesn't sound like a great husband.
Well, this was also a very tough time that they were going through. So he had just started the dialysis. All this stuff is happening. If you believe, like me, that there's actually something going on here and it is related to D.B. Cooper, he has his motivations and he can't share them with his wife. And it's not like he can say, listen, I got plenty of money. You don't need to worry about it. He's trying to tell her that, but not so many words. Meanwhile, she's just freaking out. If you know Jo, this is not a surprise that she would freak out. All right. Now that, I think, Tuesday, that's like, yeah, things are about to get really, really interesting in the Weber household. He wanted to see his sister, I think, because he was on dialysis, didn't know how much time he had left. So she's going to talk about that.
How do you tell him his sister doesn't want him there? She's afraid of him. There are things in Dwayne's past that I hesitate to discuss, but then I think perhaps I have to, knowing that all this would be kept confidential. Dwayne spent time in the penitentiary. I'm not quite sure what for. I really don't know much about his life from the time he was in his 20s until he was in his late 40s. I do know that he can steal and he can lie, and that I know for a fact. I've seen him do it. When I talked to his sister, she said that she loved him dearly, but she did not want him to come out there alone. It was all right if we came together, but that she was afraid of him, but she would not tell me what she was afraid of. It's some kind of deep, dark secret that family has hidden. I have never met any member of his family except to talk to his sister on the telephone. I know that his first wife supposedly died in an automobile accident and that there was a 9-year-old child. His sister has denied that there was a wife killed in an automobile accident or that there was ever a child. These are a lot of deep, dark secrets that he has lived with all of his life and no one really knows but him. As long as they've never interfered with our life, I haven't dug into them. But these are things that Dr. Haney cannot evaluate if he does not know.
So the point of playing these clips is just to give you a little bit of a sense of kind of the reality at the time. And this is like real time. This is before the confession. This is well before any of that. She's just trying to understand what's going on. I think it's interesting that she knew he had been in the penitentiary. Of course, there was the dream back when they lived in Littleton, which we can talk about that too.
Yeah, I love that he is this mysterious figure while he's alive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not he's dead, we'll never find out.
Right.
No, she's sleeping in the same bed as this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know anything that happened between 20 and 40.
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
Yeah, and he's given her this line about the wife dying in a car wreck. I don't know whatever happened to Daisy Schulter. I don't think I don't know that much about it myself, but I'm pretty sure it sounds like that was a line that a fib.
Well, you can't reach out and contact her if you think she's dead.
True. I mean, gosh, man. Trigger warning. This is going to get colorful. Okay.
Alrighty.
All right. This is going to get colorful. She has called Dwayne on the phone to talk to him, and I'm trying to cue you up for what's going on. Okay, so she wants to talk to him about all this financial. She feels like she's out on a financial limb. Okay, and that he's being irresponsible, and she really feels exposed. He's getting really frustrated hearing about this, and what you're about to hear is Duane Weber's own voice for the first time.
I have never threatened to smash anything up in that shop.
What?
You know I have never threatened to smash that shop.
Real?
Now, have I?
Regardless of whether you have or whether you haven't, I'm tired of hearing about the whole fucking mess. I'm going to the goddamn courthouse in the morning. I'm tired of it.
Dwayne, I have never threatened to smash anything in that shop.
Well, whatever
You can't even talk about it civilly.
Ain't nothing about the fucking shop. You can't talk to you about nothing.
Dwayne, you know, with the inventory purchases and everything for opening, there was no way it could show a profit.
Well, I'm gonna get the fucking monkey off your back, so don't worry about it.
Well, that can't be. That doesn't make it retroactive for last year.
I'll tell you what, girl. If there's any goddamn punishment for anything that I've done, I'll take my fucking medicine and you don't have to worry about it, so shut your fucking ass up. You've already done enough to convince me fully what has to be done.
Dwayne, it's not my neck. It's not your neck. It would be my neck.
Click. So, an interesting way to introduce the voice of Duane Weber. You know, I went years with never hearing that voice, and the audience they get it in the first hour or whatever. So that's anyway. So you can see kind of what's going on though here in these events of 1990 when he's on his dialysis, and it's about to escalate into a very peculiar occurrence, which led to these fake IDs that she found years later.
Why did she record that?
So she was worried. She was worried that if something happened to her, she wanted a record of kind of what was happening. Also, I believe the psychologist was encouraging them to record their feelings and thoughts on tape. She gave him a stack of tapes and a recorder, and I only have heard. I don't know if he purposely recorded them or if they were unintentional or what the story was on these recordings, but he's not talking into the recorder. He's just living his life. So he's driving down the street and Paula Abdul's The Way That You Love Me comes on the radio. And it's like, okay, it's kind of funny. Yeah, it's like, okay, what's he thinking right now? I'm just like sitting there listening to, he's driving down the road. What's in his mind? What's going on? There's another one where he turns on the news station and Peter Jennings is on there, and I can figure out the exact date that it was recorded because of the news events that are being revealed. But there's no tapes of him. She's definitely like encouraging on one cassette to speak his feelings or whatever. I think they were being encouraged by the psychologist to do that. And I think that was a big reason she was doing that. It was just to kind of process. And then she did, on occasion, these recordings or whatever, she did share them with the psychologist at some point so that someone else would have a record.
Yeah, I just find that interesting. I mean, when my wife and I have spats on the telephone, neither of us are recording it.
Right. You're not normally recording your spouse, but he had accused her of smashing the shop, and she felt like that was unjust. And so she's trying to get him on tape to admit that she didn't do that. They were on the tape talking about whether or not they're going to stay married. So this was clearly, and he at this time, he's sleeping in his trailer. He has a trailer. I have a picture of it somewhere, but, And he had that trailer parked outside his shop, and that's kind of what he was doing. So they were sort of not quite separated, but you can clearly tell there's a dynamic going on here. And I don't know what exactly all the reasons behind it. If it was just, hey, I've got all this money and I'm just going to go live my life, live the dream, be in the trailer and just do my thing. Or if there was more to it. You heard in that exchange there where he said, I can't tell you nothing. I think that had more meaning than more meaning to it. All right. So
yeah, it's definitely not all roses for them.
Right. Now, on March the 8th, 1990, he goes into the DMV and he obtains a driver's license for John Collins. Now, he does this fraudulently. It's very suspicious. The clerk, anyway, I'll let Jo speak for herself here.
Friday, midnight till 12. I'm just leaving Dr. Haney's office after having signed releases. Yesterday evening, just before dark, Highway Patrol knocked on my door, asked me who I was, showed me a picture of a man and asked me if I knew who that man was. I did not. I said, tell him who he was versus what do you want him for? And they explained to me that he had tried to obtain a driver's license under the name of John Claudia Collins. And that he told him he was 48 years old and the kidney dialysis made him look older. Upon leaving, they took his tag number because it sounded very suspicious. They checked the tag number, finding the car registered to Josephine Collins Weber. They thought it might be my father. I explained to him, no, it's my husband, and that he was very ill and under the care of a psychologist. I had the patrolman call the psychologist because they were looking for him on felony charges. The trooper assured me that after talking to the psychologist, there would be no charges provided no harm had been done to anyone.
So that's again, you're getting a snapshot in real time, which is, this is just amazing. She kept such great records. I can't tell you, it's enlightening. Because you hear all these stories and you're wondering how good is your memory. Well, this is as good as it is. So according to the exchange there, he goes into a DMV and basically fails to get a driver's license. He actually got a driver's license that day, and apparently had returned to his shop. They show up at her door. Her maiden name is Collins, so hence the connection there. It's funny, he's trying to get an ID under the name Collins, so you would think that once the DMV guy looked it up, he would think, all right, well, it checks out, it's fine. But for whatever reason, it was fishy and called the highway patrol. He had got a different ID somewhere else and succeeded. She goes to go see him at his shop. She drives all the way over there and is trying to warn him basically that the cops showed up. Well, I don't know if the cops followed her there or if they were already on their way on their own accord or what. But within minutes of her walking in that front door, here comes the cops. And he gets arrested. His gun and holster taken from him. And he's hauled off and he's put into jail.
What is he arrested for? Is having a fake ID a crime?
Well, yeah, trying to, it's a identity theft of some sort. I don't know. Even back then, it wasn't as much of a thing. But he got bailed out, not bailed out financially. He got bailed out in a general sense from that psychologist who was like, yeah, listen, he just started dialysis. These people do crazy stuff. And, they minimized it.
Right.
Yeah, rationalized it away. When the reason I'm bringing this up is because I want your audience to think of, why does he need the ID? Why does a guy who is in his 60s need a fake ID?
Who is potentially staring down the barrel of the end of his life.
Right, exactly. So why? Start doing a little bit of, this is, the audience is getting way more information than I had. All I knew is like he got arrested for this ID, and I'm like, okay, what's that have to do with anything? Joe will throw out so many things. Like, what's that have to do with anything? And I just thought about it and I'm like, okay, well, why do you need a fake ID? It's not like you're going to the bar and they're going to ID, you're 65 or whatever he was at the time. Ask yourself why he needs the ID. Get yourself thinking. I know why he needed the ID, by the way, but I'm just...
I have no idea why he would need
just
that ID.
Ponder it to yourself. Now, she calls her credit card company and finds out he's charged a bunch of money.
This morning, upon getting up, for some reason, I felt I should call on my credit card. He had asked for it for identification purposes only. This is Friday morning, March the 9th. I come to find out that within a 3-day period of time, he has charged over $3,200 to my credit card. This is a terrifying thing. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle it. I'm scared. I'm presently on my way to obtain my credit card back from him. Also the title to the trailer, if he will be so kind as to hand that to me. I would not be able to get the $3,200 out of it. He may even have already forged my name on that and used that for security. But somewhere between now and the time he got out of the hospital, $9,000 has disappeared between his own personal savings account and what he has put on my charge card. I am terrified to approach him because he does have a .38 snub nose gun in his possession, of which he has threatened at times to blow me away. I just really don't know what to do, and I am scared.
Well, anyway, so she never really told me about his threats to blow her away, so that's something new to me. But
Doesn't seem out of character.
Well, he, as far as I know, he was never really violent. There was a story that happened here in Greeley where he feigned maybe a violent streak, and anyway, I'll get back to that later. All right, so she's going to call him up from jail here, and he totally blames her for being in jail.
I just turned it on. I didn't catch it. Okay. All right.
And furthermore, there is so much security around my buildings that if you try to get close to them, you're going to be shot. There's people across the street. Jim Stalling is sitting there waiting, and everybody else is.
Well, Dwayne, I checked on the shop. I said there was too many lights on it.
Check on the shop. You were caught yesterday snooping in the shop.
Because I thought I saw somebody moving in there.
Yeah, there was a squirrel.
A squirrel?
But it don't make any difference. You do what I say, and that's it.
Well, I just walked in and got your message to get hold of Donna.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would tell Donna. You get me out of here within 24 hours, that's fine. If you don't, just don't worry about everything that you wrote in this letter, because damn sure you're right.
Well, I mean, can't we're going to have to sit down and talk, what we're going to do to resolve it.
When I get out.
Because I don't want you in that damn place.
Yeah, right.
Dwayne, I didn't put you there. Honest to God, I had nothing to do with it.
Right.
I promise.
Yeah, right. As it stands right now, I'm not going out. They're not letting me out.
Okay,
I will go to dialysis tomorrow morning.
Okay.
But that's it.
Well, I'm going to get up there to see the doctors in the morning. See, so far, they won't let me through. They won't let me talk to the doctors.
That's by my request. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear from you. And I could stop that.
Okay,
as far as the shop goes, it's not your name. I can prove it. You can go to the courthouse and find out for yourself. So you have no jurisdiction over it whatsoever. And if it's broke into,
I have not. Hey, Dwayne, I have driven by there. I did get out of my car because it looked like there was something funny, and I just walked up close to the table. That's the only time that.
We're warning you.
And the other time I checked the trailer, I felt like that water needs to be hooked off, and I told Jim that water needs to be turned off going to the trailer. I got a feeling you're going to come and find a big mess in there.
No, you're not going to find a big mess.
Okay, well, I
I'm
didn't know.
forewarning. If you go near that trailer, or if you go near the car, I'm going to have you arrested for robbery.
Dwayne, how are we going to work things out if we can't sit, we're going to have to get it all, going. And the only reason why I needed to use the car is because my choke light is coming on. I got this drunk, that dirty little guy, he's going to come try to...
That's part of the problem that you got this whole mess started with, so now I figure you can solve that. You got us in it, you get us out. You got 24 hours to do it. I don't mind you use the van, but you're going to use it with my permission, just not taking it. And I know you've got a set of keys. If that car moves from that damn lot, I'm going to charge you with robbery.
Well, I mean, how can I, in other words, I take and leave my car.
I don't care what you do.
And then use the van.
I'm not using mine until such time as I permit you to, and I do not permit you to until such time as you get me out of here. Until then, you walk. I think you can understand that thoroughly. You got 24 hours, Bob.
I'm trying.
So yeah, he wasn't very happy.
No, he's a grumpy guy.
Well, I feel bad because we're taking a slice of time when he was not at his best, and we're presenting it, and it's very easy for people to forget that he does have his good side. Yeah, he clearly had a bad side. I mean, he spent a lot of years in prison. Okay.
Yeah, I would be grumpy too if I had kidney failure and I was in jail.
Yeah, well, and he thinks the wife is. Meanwhile, she's off worrying about money, and he's So one name that was mentioned here is Jim Stalling, who had a shop across the street from his. And one day around this time, maybe a little bit after, he went over to visit Dwayne and walks in and, whoa, what do we got here? Dwayne's got stacks of cash. It's like, okay, I've seen a lot of cash before. He's got at least minimum 50 G's on the table, just counting it out. What the hell are you doing? It's about the time when him and Jim went to, I believe it was Tallahassee, and Dwayne went missing the whole Saturday. He says they were selling stuff, at a what do you call it, like sort of like a flea market kind of deal or whatever. There's like a trade show or something, and he has Jim take over his table for the whole day, and just disappears. And then after that, that's when he walks in and he's got the 50 G's on the table, and what's going on there? So you see him going on a spending spree. I've now cataloged that actually was happening. You can hear it for yourself. He may be fudging the books. And it culminates with him being arrested for trying to obtain this false ID, which of course we know he succeeded in doing because we still have it. It was shown in the documentary by John Dower, so it definitely exists. I have it at my house. So anyway, why all this? Why all this? What is happening? And does this have anything whatsoever to do with DB Cooper? And I wouldn't be posing it if it didn't. But when I'm first presented with this, I did not know that. I'm just trying to I don't know. It's just one more weird thing. Along with weird things. Today's the 13th, as I said, we were recording. And immediately after that money was found on the river, some interesting things start happening at the Weber household. He starts to talk about relocating. I want to relocate. And this ends with him quitting his job and moving. Except for when he moved, Joe and the stepdaughter stayed here in town at the house paying rent. They stayed until she finished high school. It was her senior year of high school. So they didn't want to move mid-year. He went, God only knows where. He would call occasionally, I'm in Alabama or I'm in Georgia or wherever it was he was at. And he didn't get that was so his last official day was like April something of 1980. But I will show you here where within 10 days he's talking about moving. So 8 days after that money find is in the paper, we get this memo. Okay. And you can see the date, right? You can tell your audience it's February 21st, 1980. 8 days after, and he's summarizing a conversation he had about relocation. He wants to relocate out of Fort Collins. The funny thing about Fort Collins is he made 40 G's that year. 40 G's he grossed. Now, he was very aggressive in his tax write-offs, but 40 G's in 1979, 1980, yeah, it was a 79 return, is higher than the norm.
Yeah. It's a great wage.
So why is this guy all of a sudden leaving? And not to necessarily say that the money find is causing him to leave, but again, it's one of those like timely coincidences where I'm sitting there, all right, is this related? Or it's a logical fallacy to think, A happens and then B happens, so therefore A causes B, but is there something there? I don't know. And it took me years to figure this one out. So I'm only posing the question. I'm not anticipating an answer from anybody, but you can think about it. I will say how I was able to I had to put myself in his shoes, assume that he's D.B. Cooper. And when it hit me, I was actually driving up this way, and I thought, I could go over to that house, and what would I do if I went over to that house? Would I knock on the door? What would I say? And I started just thinking about it, and I started thinking, well, okay, what if I was Dwayne and I was living there? What's life like? And I just started to play with that a little bit. Another one of those thought experiments, so to speak. And then all of a sudden it hit me. I think I know why he moved all of a sudden. Maybe your listener might have a different, they might come up with something different than I came up with. So I don't want to give you what I believe to be the answer.
It is quite an incredible coincidence. February of 1980.
Yeah,
I got to move.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's wanting to move. Why? I've heard people say, well, that just makes it look suspicious. Well, yeah, if you're looking at it in hindsight under a microscope. And like I said, I feel like it took me years to figure out what the hell his motivation was there, because it didn't make sense. But so in other words, it's not so obvious. There's some other incidents that she talks about where she says there was a special on TV and about D.B. Cooper because he was in the news. And they went out on a rare occasion midweek when they normally didn't do, and they had this dinner with this couple who owned the cleaners, like the
like a dry cleaner.
Like a dry cleaner place. They owned a dry cleaner place, and they went to a hotel and bar and had dinner. And she talks about how her and the other wife were both wanting to. They were both wanting to watch that special, but for whatever reason, they were out at dinner. I tried to look up a special, I tried to find. I couldn't find. And then it dawned on me though that their terrestrial television would have been coming from Cheyenne instead of Denver, so I never really checked Cheyenne. But I still not convinced I would have been able to find it. I don't know. I believe her. I believe the story. I wanted to have. I like to have like exact dates.
Right.
I can't tell. I'm like. Listen, the more I can tell you, like, here's the exact day this happened, the better it is. Go ahead and read that to your.
Family life has been good to me, but I seem to be fighting a hidden element somewhere which I can't possibly guess where. So that is where I'm at presently.
Yeah, so he's basically saying, I interpret that as he feels like the walls are kind of coming in on him. I mean, I feel like that's a psychological tell there. Maybe you could say I'm reading into that or not, but this whole letter is about him relocating, why he wants to relocate, and he's just I'm fighting this hidden element, like as if something's out to get him. That's where I said in our text exchange the other day, I said I want to believe that he thought maybe karma was coming for him, but I you can't say for sure. Can't say for sure, but I do have his actions. When he moves and he doesn't have a job, He's paying 2 rents. Now I have where he got hired. He got hired in September, and then later in December he got hired by Family Life again. So there was people who thought maybe he was embezzling or something. Yeah, throw all those dumb theories out. He quit on his own accord and left town, left his wife and his stepdaughter, paying 2 rents, and didn't work for several months.
It's tough to pull that off.
Well, he was able to do it. I wonder how.
Tim and I have a lot more to talk about, but Russell bullied me into turning this into a 2-parter, so stay tuned for part 2. It's really good. Questions or comments for Tim? Shoot them our way and we'll get them to Tim for you. Is there a suspect we haven't covered yet? A theory you think we got wrong? Do you know who DB Cooper is? Let us know. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or email us dbcooperpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you to Tim Collins for driving all the way to my house in a snowstorm to talk about Weber and Cooper. Thank you to Russell Colbert for still doing the show and being my friend, which I know is tough. I'm Darren Schaefer, and thank you for listening to the Cooper Vortex.